So what I would like to cover in the next 20 minutes or so is a little bit more about my background. I'd like to talk to you about the project and particularly the continuous improvement landscape at Clifford Chance. Just some thoughts as to why it is hard building project management capability in law firms, and then run through some initiatives, some of the things that we've tried in the time that I've been at Clifford Chance, and just really wrap up with what I feel that we've learned from our experiences. So in terms of my background, so I read physics at Oxford. I then went and did an MSc in something called manufacturing systems engineering. And this was in the early 90s when many large manufacturing organizations were really looking at process improvement in a big way. But I did experience a great deal of resistance to examination of processes, any attempts to understand somebody else's processes, and I had quite a bit of shouting at from production controllers and various managers on the shop floor who clearly thought that the work they did was far too complicated to be interfered with by somebody that was trying to understand their process and make it better. And since then, I've moved through a number of different roles in manufacturing. And now I find myself in the service sector in Canary Wharf, in the shiny, gleaming lights there. Very different from my background and my experience in manufacturing. But I would say that the fundamental truth that I felt as a young physics graduate, which is basically there isn't anything that you can't decompose in order to better understand it, has remained true across my wanderings through factories and through offices and through sectors. So, projects at Clifford Chance. So the global program group that I run was formed by combining an IT projects group and a business projects group. And this was actually took place before my time, so I inherited the group. And essentially, what that has enabled us to do is to keep our knowledge in-house. So before the establishment of the group, we had many contract project managers, contract business analysts coming in, doing projects, and then leaving. So we weren't keeping our knowledge in-house. The second thing that we've achieved is that we have a group of people who really understand how to deploy change in our organization. And that's difficult in a big global law firm. Lawyers are very change resistant, certainly is my experience. So we've got a bunch of people, 20 in London, and then 4 project managers in our shared service center, which is based just outside Delhi, New Delhi, who really know the business and know how to get things done. And the third thing that has helped us with is that we now have a central investment pot. So it's actually very easy to see where we are spending money on change. A little bit about continuous improvement. So the continuous improvement journey started about 4 years ago at Clifford Chance. It's just like before that, back in 2009, before I joined. And I work very closely with a chap called Oliver Campbell, who's our head of business transformation, who runs that group. So the CI, continuous improvement team, branched out from the program group, started off working on what we describe as quasi-legal projects, so very much finance, HR processes that maybe had a little bit of impact on the lawyers, but not a significant amount. So looking at process improvement in those areas. And then over time, the team has managed to build up its credibility within the firm so that it now works with our lawyers on process improvement of legal processes. And the team now is a 6-strong team of practitioners, all based in London. But what the group has also managed to achieve is to create a community of about 200 people who do continuous improvement part-time. So they're people that have been trained either up to yellow belt or green belt level in the sort of terminology of Lean Six Sigma. And they work with the black belts, the central team, to deliver, to date, over 100 projects across 25 offices. And many of those projects have involved clients. I think the team has been quite well recognised, actually, in terms of the industry. They've won a couple of awards over the last few years. And the really important thing about what the team does with respect to the clients is, quote our managing partner, the clients love it. They really love this kind of work being done by the legal teams that they're working with. So, why is it hard then, building project management capability in law firms? And I think particularly when you think about how extensively project management is used in all of these industries that we would recognise. And PMI, the Project Management Institute, now obviously they have a vested interest, but this is a prediction that they make at the moment. So 15.7 million new project management roles will be added globally across these 7 project-intensive industries by 2020. And I would say that this fits with my experience of project management over the last 20 years. I fell into project management, just kind of ended up there through working in IT and various operational roles, whereas today there are bachelor's degrees, there are master's degrees, there are PhDs in the subject, and I think many graduates actually make it an active career choice at that stage in their career. So there's no doubt that there's growth in project management as a discipline. So, difficult in law firms. Well, I think there's 2 main reasons. One of the core principles of project management is that you isolate the management aspects of the project work from the specialist contributions. And that's really straight from the sort of Prince 2 terminology. And then the second core principle, I would say, and again, straight from Prince 2 terminology, is that it's very generic. So it's based on proven principles across many different industries. But to some extent, I think that's the problem when it comes to working with our lawyers, because rather like some of the more recalcitrant production controllers that I had to work with many years ago on the shop floor, specialists don't like their work that they really believe is too difficult for anybody else to understand, never mind manage being interfered with. And I think that's the real challenge that we have to overcome if we want to embed project management capability in law firms. So, and the other factor that only reinforces that natural point of view is the recognised, I think, scepticism of lawyers. So you may well be familiar with caliper profile sampling, and a lot of work has been done to compare lawyers versus the general public on a number of different dimensions. And if you look at the dimension of scepticism, here we go. Oh dear, I seem to have lost a build in my slide. But I think you can guess which one is the lawyers, right? It's the one on the left-hand side that is 90% versus the one on the right-hand side, which is the general public, which is 50%. Our head of HR, who is one of our partners, a lady called Laura King, shared this information with me a while ago, actually, and also a number of other dimensions as well, which are also interesting, but not really beyond the scope of today's session. But, I mean, I think it's absolutely true. Certainly in my dealings with our partners over the last 4 years, it's very difficult to convince a lawyer of something that wasn't his idea. Okay, so what we've done. So it was always going to be a tough sell then, trying to crack the project management as a big whole. And Oliver Campbell, who I mentioned, and we saw this very early on when we started working together. We ran a pilot, and we seconded one of my more sort of lawyer-friendly project managers into a mergers and acquisitions due diligence. So she joined the team, she went up and sat with the team on their floor and essentially tried to execute the project management activities on the matter. And the outcome of that pilot was that absolutely it makes sense to separate the legal work from the administrative work. So kind of big tick there. But the conclusion was really that the project management needs to be done by a lawyer. And the reasons were because of the integration of the legal and the management issues, because you need legal experience and because the legal decisions drive the management decisions. And I think we felt that's where you have the catch-22, because if you give the job of project managing a matter to a lawyer who's also doing the lawyering on the matter, then of course they're going to prioritise the lawyering, not only because that's obviously what they like doing, because that's their job, but also if you have a billable hour focus, as we certainly do at Clifford Chance, then that's what people are focused on. So you kind of end up losing out if you take that approach. And since we ran this pilot 4 years ago, the continuous improvement team has done a lot more work with legal teams working on matters, and they've had much more success in introducing small elements of just keeping track of activities, keeping track of budgets, and we've kind of got in there much more by stealth working with the lawyers on their matters. So, we tried to do exactly that. We tried to stop trying to influence the whole, and we started to try and influence the parts. And so if you think of the classic project management triangle, which has come out completely, oh, goodness me, has come out as a diamond. Interesting. So obviously, you've learned from today that while I might know something about project management, I know absolutely nothing about building PowerPoint slides. Anyway, the three classic project management dimensions of time, cost, and quality. So what we've tried to do is run initiatives that really address each of those dimensions, and I'll just talk about those initiatives now. So I'm kind of, it's a bit of a voyage of discovery now, really. I'm not entirely clear what's going to pop up on the screen next. So, cost. So I think it's pretty logical, I would say, that if you can identify profitable clients and matters, and then you can actually analyse those matters that were profitable to understand the drivers, then with any luck you should be able to use that to make better informed decisions on staffing. And hopefully what that would lead you to do is focus on profitable work. I would say so far so logical. But the challenge that we have, and again particularly in a big organisation, is everybody wants to measure things their own way. Generally in a way that makes them look better. And they get data from all sorts of different places. Big, complex law firm, lots of complex systems. People can get their data from all sorts of different places. And of course, what then happens is they end up arguing about it and kind of despairing, really. So what we've been working on over the last 2 to 3 years is trying to deal with that by, first of all, building a data warehouse that consolidates our transactional data, defining a number of measures of profitability, kind of this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to measure it, and then building reports initially and now, and this is what this slide shows you here, dashboards that present that information in hopefully a user-friendly way. It's probably not terribly user-friendly from where you're sitting, because obviously the type is small, but actually on a nice big screen, this is really quite a good snapshot of the key dimensions of the matter. We have this sort of nice, I'm not going to try and work this actually, we have this nice profitability waterfall, which basically shows you the revenue obviously is the big one, and then bit by bit we take off the cost, so you actually get to whether or not you're in profit or otherwise. So we've demoed these dashboards to our partners and actually had quite a positive response. So in the new year, we're going to be running a pilot in using these dashboards on individual matters that partners are responsible for to really see if we can crack this. Here's the information. It's the same information we're all using, and actually let's use it in decision making to drive what we do. That's the sort of big complicated IT project, but in parallel, what the continuous improvement team have been doing is much more sort of quick and dirty snapshots of key information. So this is a WIP, work in progress report that partners can request. You can see it's very simple. It's literally got the details of the matter, and then it has a breakdown by practice area, and then on the right-hand side by offices of the total value of time versus budget. So it's a really quick snapshot to show them where they are on their matter. And actually, that's obviously a spreadsheet, but it's actually delivered in an email. So it's really consumable, really easy. And more and more partners have been asking for this sort of information. Okay, so that's cost. So let's think about quality. Over the last year, we've introduced a new role on each matter. And the idea of this role is that there is a standard checklist, and one individual on the matter, typically a more senior associate, has the responsibility to make sure we tick all those boxes on that checklist. These are things like getting the billing details from the client, drafting fee estimates or assumptions, and other quite standard aspects of business practice, I would say, in my non-lawyerly way. And what that means, of course, is that you can start to generate repeatable processes, and more repeatable processes, broadly speaking, the greater that contributes to client satisfaction. So that's the managing associate, we call it. That's the name of the role, the managing associate initiative that we've been running for the last year. Another initiative that influences quality is resource management. So what we have in some of our big practice areas in London is the concept of a resource manager. And these are independent and trusted advisors who have the job of allocating lawyers to matters. So it's taking it away from the partner looking outside his office and kind of grabbing the person that he's worked with for the last 6 deals because he trusts that person. So it introduces an element of independence. But also what those resource managers, of course, can look at is not just experience and not just level of qualification, but also has this person actually been working on a matter for the last 6 months and not had a weekend off, in which case, do we want to put them on another one that's going to be the same for the next 6 months? So what we're finding is that these resource managers are really in a much better position to get the right person, taking everything into account for that particular matter. And again, getting the right person on the job at the right time, client satisfaction. So, thinking a little bit about time then, this is where the continuous improvement team has definitely had some good results. They've run, as I mentioned at the start, over 100 or so projects, many with lawyers, where they've streamlined the process, which of course cuts down the time, which hopefully has a good impact on the client in terms of billing, but also, of course, just gets the job done quicker, which we all want to do generally. So just a couple of examples of projects that they've run. So one was in the area of disclosure review. So they managed to reduce the average duration of a disclosure document review by 40%. And then another project they ran with our office in New York managed to reduce the time to close a distressed debt trade by 50%. So quite significant proportions of time taken off the length of doing the job. In parallel to specific initiatives, such as those that I've described, one of the things we've tried to do is influence the fabric of the organisation. And by this, I'm thinking really about training. My observation from my 4 years at Clifford Chance is it's very difficult to influence top-down. It's inherent with the partnership structure. It's very, very difficult. You can't just tell people what to do. But influencing bottom-up and getting people interested in something, getting people interested in ideas and getting them talking about it, I think is actually quite a good way of influencing. So in both project management and in continuous improvement, we run training, which Oliver and I both do. So on the project side, I have 2 courses that I run. So one is aimed at managers. It's a day's workshop, really, on project management. It introduces the key tools of project management: Gantt charts, risk and issues logs, network diagrams, work breakdown structure, completely standard project management tools that can help people address any aspect of their work. And the course runs using a case study, so we actually apply the tools. More recently, I've developed a course for assistants, so sort of coordinator level, so a lot of legal secretaries would fall into that grouping. So I've delivered this course, it's just 3 hours, and I'm finding that more and more legal secretaries are coming to attend the course and finding real benefit from learning about standard project management tools that they can use in their work. And of course, I think we all know that secretaries definitely influence their lawyers. On the continuous improvement side, we have a well-established training program for business services, but also for lawyers. And to date, the team has trained 300 business services staff and over 500 lawyers in continuous improvement techniques. So that's kind of what we've done. What we've learnt, I think one step at a time can't be emphasized too much. It's very difficult. My experience is very difficult to do things differently in a big conservative organization. So really one step at a time. And then I think the other thing is really make it specific to lawyers. My experience is the lawyers are not interested in hearing generic jargon. And to some extent, you have to sort of prove your credibility even to get listened to. So you really need to understand what they're doing and make sure you're talking in the terms that they will respond to. And then I think the last thing following on from that is just don't call it project management. Thank you very much.